Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to Emergency Management Associates. Coming to you from the Area Command, 392 miles west of Kitty Hawk Beach, North Carolina. We want to welcome everybody to this program this evening. We appreciate you all being here. I'm sorry we're a little bit late. I had some trouble again with YouTube. I had to overcome that, and now I'm here with you tonight. We're going to start off this program as we normally have with a salute to the United States of America. I would ask you all now to please rise for the singing of the United States National Anthem.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now would you make welcome straight from Washington, D.C., the United States Army Corps Quartet.
Yeah.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Oh, yeah! Come on, folks, let them know it. America's finest right there.
America's finest, the United States Army Barbershop Quartet, performing at the Barbershop Quartet Convention in 2015. We appreciate all of our armed forces, men and women, wherever they might be around this globe. We appreciate and love them very much, and we want to thank them for their service. I want to thank not only the United States military armed forces, but also the allied military forces from other countries that help support the United States of America. I want to thank them all for their service. I want to thank them for their families and for all that they mean to us. May God bless you all. May God bless you that you might return home to your families after your tours of duty end. And thank you all for your service. God bless you all. Folks, we have a huge program for you tonight. Now, I want to put up some pictures here for you. First off, I want to talk about President Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was President of the United States back in the 70s. He took over from Gerald Ford. He promised not to be involved in scandals of any kind, which he was not. He promised to do his best that he possibly could, which I believe he did. But unfortunately, Jimmy Carter did not have the clout that he wanted to have when he was President of the United States. He didn't have the clout, and that's why he didn't perform as well as he wanted to, or as well as we all thought he could. Now, I'm going to pay tribute to him. This picture is probably the closest picture we have, or that I have, to the man that I knew. I met Jimmy Carter back in the 80s, back in the late 80s. Jimmy Carter had come to San Diego with Habitat for Humanity and was working on a house in one area when I arrived in that area. I did not arrive in that area where Jimmy Carter was to help him or even to protect him. I arrived on another matter. After my partner and I were through with what we were doing, President Carter was up on the roof with one of his Secret Service agents, I guess, installing shingles on the roof of the house that they had been working on. Mr. Carter, President Carter, and his Secret Service agent got down off the roof and came over to visit my partner and I. He thanked us for our service. He's a great man who loved military people, and he also loved the people who served him and served others in law enforcement. And he thanked us profusely. He came over and shook our hands and patted us on the shoulders, almost giving us a hug. Now, President Carter was 100 years old yesterday when he passed away. He passed away after 2 years being in hospice. He and his wife celebrated their 77th wedding anniversary in July 2023. 4 months later, Rosalind Carter passed away on November 19th, 2023 last year, dying peacefully with her family by her side in Plains, Georgia. Now the devoted pair are united again. I want to post a picture of President Carter when he was in the Navy. I guess I do, right here. Here's a picture of President Carter when he was in the Navy with Rosalind Carter, his wife. Now the devoted couple are together again after her death and his death yesterday. The Carter Center shared a touching poem penned by former President Jimmy Carter to his beloved wife Rosalind ahead of her hometown funeral a little more than a year ago. The couple's marriage was the longest in U.S. presidential history, as they first met when Rosalind was just a day old. Yeah, she was a day old when he first met her. The touching verses encapsulate the former leader's long-standing devotion to his wife. And these words have become a poignant reminder of their everlasting love following Jimmy Carter's death yesterday morning at age 100. They began dating in 1945 when Rosalind was 17 years old and a friend of Carter's sister Ruth introduced them. The couple shared 77 years of marriage, with the relationship standing the test of time, as well as the challenge of Navy deployment, a presidential campaign, and Carter's subsequent time in presidential office in Washington, D.C. The couple welcomed 4 children, 25 grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and they remained utterly devoted to each other their whole lives. Now, I want to play a news media tribute from Fox News.
remembering former U.S. President Jimmy Carter. He died yesterday at the age of 100. In addition to his time in the White House, Carter is being remembered for the work he did after his presidency with Habitat for Humanity, including right here in the city. Fox 8's Kendall Green will have that story as part of our team coverage tonight. But first, let's go to Sharon Crowley live in the studio with the latest on the tributes that are pouring in from around the world. Sharon.
Yeah, that's right, Natasha. Former President Jimmy Carter certainly cemented his legacy with the charitable work that he did around the world after he left the White House. He won the Nobel Prize in 2002 for his human rights work, and he died on Sunday following 2 years in hospice. Former First Lady Rosalind Carter died in 2023. The couple were married for 77 years.
America and the world, in my view, lost a remarkable leader.
President Biden will deliver the eulogy at former President Jimmy Carter's funeral. Flags are flying at half-staff to honor the life and legacy of America's longest-living former president. Carter died at his home in Plains, Georgia, Sunday at the age of 100.
Back in the early 2000s, President and Mrs. Carter decided that they would be buried in Plains. So they were even thinking about economic development of Plains and tourism, in their death. So that will ensure that this town will always be a center point for tourism, because there's a lot of people that want to see presidential burial sites.
Friends and colleagues are remembering Carter as a man of integrity who tried to restore faith in the American government following the Watergate scandal.
He said, "I will never lie to you. I will never cheat. I will bring honor to the presidency."
Fans of the former president are now leaving flowers and candles at the Carter Center in Georgia. Carter is expected to lie in state in the Capitol early next month ahead of his official state funeral on January 9th, which has been declared a national day of mourning. Tributes are also pouring in from around the world. Some leaders say Carter's role in mediating Mideast conflicts will be missed. Here in the U.S., the focus remains on Carter's legacy of service, which continues to inspire younger Americans.
For my generation, I think we should use him as an example of what diplomacy looks like, of what reaching across the aisle truly looks like.
Well, the Carter Center says that in addition to the state funeral memorial services, there are more events expected to be announced just in the coming days. And now I want to turn things over to my colleague, Kendall Green, who's in the East Village outside a building that Jimmy Carter helped restore. Right, Kendall?
Hey, good evening, Sharon. The gift President Carter left behind here in the East Village was a gift of access of housing, along with the perfect example of philanthropy, an example that lives decades beyond a single act of kindness.
The footprint of most U.S. presidents are scattered across the globe, just as those of late President Jimmy Carter's. Yet his legacy is deeply entrenched in Lower Manhattan's East Village, after stories of the ultimate class act there lived beyond his years.
It was like, this is never going to happen. And then it happened.
40 years ago, in 1984, many assumed the global figure would put on a hard hat and dress for his photo op with his wife at Mascot Flats. But look at him work, transforming blight into light.
It was deserted. And he came over here and he did a little something, something. And I appreciate that.
It's one thing to call for volunteerism, and it's another thing to do something about it.
President Jimmy Carter redefined his legacy by getting his hands dirty, making a real difference with philanthropic organizations like Habitat for Humanity.
Right there in Mascot Flats in the Lower East Side is the first site where Jimmy Carter and Rosalind Carter came to build with Habitat for Humanity, the 6-story building that you can visit today.
I'm doing it. Brick laid the two sides.
Paul Arroyo remembers the president's visit like it was yesterday, watching him work up close. But as powerful as the image was of Carter, a former president, working side by side with a common man, Carter's words were packed with even more power.
When he talked, he's a faithful man. He's a Christian man. I even became Christian behind him.
The gift Carter's example gave the residents at Mascot Flats was priceless. 98% of the children there not only graduated from high school, but went on to community college or college. And since that first project, Habitat NYC has built and renovated 1,000 homes and apartments in the city's 5 boroughs.
He built alongside 100,000 volunteers. He and His incredible wife, Rosalind, helped build close to 4,500 homes worldwide. We should all take it as an example of the selfless service which he lived his life.
The lesson behind Carter's life here is this: it's important what leaders say. It's equally important what they do and what they're seen doing. That's like us here in the East.
It's important to be seen what you're doing and why you're doing it. Jimmy Carter dead at age 100 yesterday, more than a year after his wife Rosalind passed away last November 17th. I love this man. At first, I didn't like him at all, okay, because of the things he did during his presidency. However, when I saw him out hammering nails in a roof in San Diego City, I realized he was a real deal. He was a man that loved his fellow man, and he served in Habitat for Humanity across the country, literally. He was a man that was raised up on a farm, raising his farm, doing what he loved to do best. He went into politics and then became the President of the United States. He was not very successful as a president, except when he united Menachem Begin and Yasser Arafat with Egypt and Israel in a peace treaty. That was his legacy. However, there's a lot more to him than that. And unfortunately, he was not a man of the world. He was not a man of Washington, D.C. He said he was going to do his best, which I believe he did. He did his best without any other hubbub. That I can appreciate. This man was a real man. He respected everybody. I believe he respected everybody, regardless of who they were. I grew to love this man over the years. Didn't love his presidency, but I loved the man. Jimmy Carter dead today at 100 years old. Now, I want to talk about quite a few other things. We have not had any major earthquakes at all around the world. We've had some large 5.0 to 5.7 earthquakes during the past 3 days. Those are the largest. One was over in Luzon, Philippines. Let me pull up the USGS map and I'll show you where Luzon, Philippines is. Northern Luzon, Philippines. Okay? Let me take down the webcam and let me take down our banner here. I want to show you what we're talking about here. Over here in Luzon, Philippines. This was a 5.7 earthquake. They downgraded this to 5.5 earthquake. This is one of the smaller islands in the Philippines. This is in the northern part of the Philippines. Look where it hit. It hit in the mountainous region of Luzon, Philippines. However, it was a very strong earthquake. There are cities and towns over here. There's a small city to the northeast right here. There are small towns as well. For example, over here. Okay? And other small towns around the region. This was a powerful earthquake. It was just a large earthquake, but it was a very large earthquake. Now, I don't give a flying rat's frosty keister what USGS says. They call these moderate earthquakes. They are not moderate earthquakes. 5.0 to 5.9 have always been large earthquakes, and large earthquakes cause large amounts of damage. Moderate earthquakes 4.0, 4.9 that USGS has begun calling light earthquakes earlier this year. Those earthquakes cause moderate damage. There's no such thing as light damage during a moderate earthquake. I've seen that happen. Okay? Now, Luzon, Philippines have had a lot of damage as of late. This is not the first large earthquake to hit Luzon, Philippines in the past 6 months. They had one other earthquake that hit this area as well as a very large, I think it was a 5.8. But this earthquake did damage here in the Philippines. There have been many other earthquakes as well. Okay? Now, yesterday over here in Taiwan, north of Luzon, there was a 4.5 earthquake here. Okay? It was over on the northwestern shore. Okay? Over, not on the shore, but over just east of the western shoreline of Taiwan. A moderate earthquake. Other moderate earthquakes have hit around the globe. Now, I can pull this out. I can show you Europe. I can show you the Middle East. USGS is not telling even half the story of exactly what's going on. Okay? I've shown you this before. I'm going to show you, zooming in here to over here in southern Spain. Actually, I'm sorry, this is not Spain, this is Turkey. This is a 4.1 moderate earthquake here. Southwestern Turkey. Okay? We can go over here to Ethiopia. This is not the last earthquake nor the first earthquake that's hit here in Ethiopia since Friday. Friday there was a 5.6 earthquake here. This earthquake I just highlighted in blue is a 4.8 moderate earthquake. Right next to it here to the south is another 4.7. These are moderate earthquakes. These are aftershocks of a 5.6 that hit here on Friday. Okay? Ethiopia's been hit with these earthquakes. Okay? Now look why. It's right next to a fault line here. Right literally next to a fault line. Look at all these other swarms of quakes that are happening. These are all aftershocks of that earlier 5.6 last week. Okay? This is a 4.6. This is a 4.4. This is a 4.5. This is a 4.7. This is the 4.6. This is the 4.6. This is a 4.8. But it's just to the right or just to the east of this fault line here in Ethiopia. This is why this earthquake hit here. But be advised, this is also in a volcanic zone as well. It's in a volcanic zone as well. Look here. A volcano here. There are also other areas around this where there has been lava rushing out of the volcano here. Okay? All over this area. Okay? That's why this earthquake hit here in Ethiopia. They want to say whatever they want. I don't really give a darn. USGS is still not doing their job. They're not doing their job. Over here in the Indian Ocean, this is the Carlsberg Ridge here in the Indian Ocean. I'm zooming in here to show you the Carlsberg Ridge here. This is a large fault zone to the northwest in the Indian Ocean here. This is a 4.7 earthquake. Last week we had a 5.0 large earthquake here. So this 4.7 is an aftershock of that earthquake. 4.7 over here in the Carlsberg Ridge area. Now, it's not going to be the last earthquake here either. I'm going just briefly over here to Iceland. Okay? Right here at this volcano to the southeastern side of Iceland, we had a 4.7 earthquake here. Why? Because under this ice here is a volcano. Under this ice sheet here is a volcano. That's why we had an earthquake this size here. Going over here to the Reykjanes Peninsula. Right here, just on the southern edge of the Reykjanes Peninsula here, we had another 4.5 earthquake here yesterday. Okay? 2 earthquakes here in Iceland yesterday. Now, what do you think has happened? Okay? The beginning of last week, we talked to you about a volcano that was still going. It has preliminarily shut down. They don't believe it's going to be shut down forever. Now, it stopped erupting. But we believe it's still going to get going again very soon. But to the north of that volcano here, okay, is erupting in this area here. Okay? To the north, we have had some earthquakes. We believe that the magma has gone further through the rock area here because we've had some minor earthquakes here. The magma's gone further north from where it has been erupting over in this area here. Scientists are now believing that this area is also going to erupt. Okay? They believe the magma has rushed into this area, fractured the rock in this area, and it will further erupt to the north here. That's what they're believing. Okay? That's what's going on. Now, do I have any other questions about so far what we've talked about? I want to make sure we're answering your questions here as well. Richard Smith says there was a magnitude 4.0 over in Quebec the other day. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And I fully expect that those earthquakes are going to increase. Okay? Wendy B. 47 said Jimmy Carter didn't receive one of those strange envelopes at the Bush funeral. No, he did not. I believe that was politics staged at the elder Bush's funeral. Okay? We can talk about that another time. Yes, we are going to talk about preparedness tonight. Okay? I've gotten some additional information I'm going to pass on to you tonight. Catherine Sigerson is talking about the cold here in the chat. She said the U.S. could have a national emergency if the power goes out due to the cold. Apparently the grid is already stressed. Yes, it is. Let me talk about that really quickly. Okay? Let me back out this map over the United States again. Okay? There's a huge cold front coming out of Alberta, Canada. Okay? A huge cold front coming out of here in Alberta, Canada. It's dropping to the south and to the east. As that cold front goes into Montana, Wyoming, North and South Dakota, Michigan, and Wisconsin and Minnesota, and moves out to the east through Ohio, through the Ohio Valley into Indiana and points east, that cold front is going to expand. Okay? Already we're seeing colder temperatures dropping down even into Texas. By the end of this week, I even think by the middle of this week, Texas is going to see severe cold temperatures. Severe cold temperatures into the teens, dropping below freezing levels here, Fahrenheit. 32 degrees Fahrenheit is freezing here in the United States. Okay? It's going to drop below freezing here in the United States here in Texas. Okay? They've experienced cold here before. We believe there's going to be snow here in Texas by the end of this week. Severe cold. This cold front is going to expand through Arkansas and Louisiana, down here to the south. There's going to be cold and even snow down here. Mississippi and Alabama as well. Kentucky, Tennessee, possibly even cold temperatures down into northern Florida. And I'm talking 20s and 30s in Florida. Okay? Very cold temperatures. Those cold temperatures are going to be evident in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. At least western North Carolina, if not the entire state of North Carolina, may see snow by the end of this week. We've seen teen temperatures, 13, 14, 18 degree temperatures this past week here in North Carolina where I live. We may even see snow by the end of this week. Okay? There's going to be cold temperatures and even snow over here in the New York area, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Delaware, Maine, New Hampshire. A huge nor'easter is expected to develop up here in the northeastern part of the United States by the end of this week. Severe cold temperatures, guys. Severe cold temperatures. Michael Kearney says Florida snow? Possibly. Possibly. If this huge storm that's crossing this country gets going enough, yes, there could be cold snow in northern Florida. They've seen it before. Okay? It's going to be frosty all over the country, all over Canada as well. Okay? Sage Pump says, I think they meant New Year. Yeah, possibly as much as early as Wednesday, January 1st. Okay? Renee Savage says we could use some snow here in Shelby, North Carolina. Kidzu bugs were horrible this year. I agree. They were. They were horrible here in Morganton, North Carolina as well. My wife loves the snow. I would love to have some snow here for her. I don't like the snow particularly because of my health. My body doesn't like the cold temperatures. But for my wife, let's bring it on. Richard Smith says it's raining in Nova Scotia, Canada. I have a feeling, Richard, you guys are going to get hammered with a snowstorm within the next day or two. Big time. Richard Smith says it feels like the spring. You just wait for that cold temperature to come eastbound. It's coming. It's coming. Catherine Sigerson is over in Manitoba, Canada. She says she can feel the cold a little more today. She plugged her car in anyway. There's what they call an engine heater. When we lived in Fargo, North Dakota, my dad had an engine heater put on the car where you plug it in and it circulates oil throughout the engine during the night, keeping the engine warmer so it will start up in the morning. Okay? It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It also keeps the battery fairly warm so it doesn't lose the energy, so it'll start in the morning. NCWQ says weather says 50 degrees for her area and 20s at night. Yeah, it's going to be cold. Captain Sigerson says a block heater. Yes, that's what they used to call it. Berlinda says she uses those in Ohio as well. But guys, it's going to be bitter cold in the next couple days throughout the northern tier of states. Bitter cold. Any other questions here? Any more questions about that? Dave is Canadian Patriot 1 here in the chat. My friend Dave says he'd send me some snow, but it'd melt on the way there. Oh, I can imagine it would. My wife would love it, though. I'm really hoping and praying we get some snow here. We haven't had snow in 3 years. I had some snow here when I first moved here 4 years ago. When my wife got here 2.5, 3 years ago, we haven't had any snow since. So she brought the warmer temperatures. I'm going to blame that on her. Michael Kearney is asking, is there another Arctic front behind this one? I believe there is. I believe there is. I think it's going to be coming out of the Pacific, out of Alaska, going down the coastline and over into Washington and Oregon and that area this time. This one's coming out of Canada. This is an Arctic, what do they call it? I can't remember my train of thought now. An Arctic blast. Okay, it's coming out way out of the Arctic, guys. It's going to be very cold. Okay. Catherine Sigerson says she's seen the radar. It doesn't look nice. I don't think so either. I've seen it too. Polar vortex. Michael McKinney says yes. Polar vortex. It's not going to be pretty at all. Those of you that watch Ryan Hall Y'all, or those of you that don't know who Ryan Hall Y'all is, he is a weather forecaster here on YouTube. I really believe that if you haven't seen Ryan Hall Y'all, tune in to Ryan Hall Y'all after today's broadcast, and he has put up a forecast for this storm, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all. It's going to be very, very, very cold. Okay, tonight I want to talk about the Pacific Northwest. Okay? I want to talk about a 9.0, 10.0 earthquake that's going to hit the Pacific Northwest. Specifically, over there in the area between Vancouver Island and Washington State. Okay? You see a violet area there that's called the Strait of Juan de Fuca. It's a waterway coming off the Pacific Ocean over into the Vancouver Island area and over towards Seattle-Tacoma area, okay? Huge waterway there. It's called the Puget Sound area over there, okay? But this earthquake is going to hit off the coast of Vancouver and Seattle, Washington. You see the Cascadia subduction zone. That Cascadia subduction zone goes all the way into Northern California, off the coast, Northern California. We talked about this before. It goes all the way over to Haida Gwaii, Queen Charlotte Island, okay? It follows the coastline up and down the coast of British Columbia, all the way down into Northern California. Follows the coastline. Further west from the Cascadia subduction zone, you see the Juan de Fuca Fault, that zigzag fault line there, okay? That is the Juan de Fuca Fault. I believe the earthquake is actually going to hit between the Juan de Fuca Fault and the Cascadia subduction zone, okay? Now, I've got more information, and I believe that we're due a huge earthquake here very shortly. This is why my discussion tonight is going to be on emergency preparedness for earthquakes. Emergency preparedness for earthquakes. Now, this whole area here, this whole area down to Northern California is a 700-mile long fault line. 700-mile long fault line, okay? It's not a joke. This is serious. Major fault line. The scientists believe it's going to be at least a 9.0, 10.0 earthquake. The largest earthquake anybody's ever seen. The largest earthquake anyone has ever seen before. Okay? I'm telling you guys, this is serious. This is very, very serious. Okay? I want to make sure that you know what's going on. Okay, that's why I'm here. Now, back in the day, when this last earthquake hit back in 1700, January 26, 1700. When this earthquake hit, the indigenous Americans that were here in this area believed that a great big huge thunderbird, the bird itself, not the car, but the bird, caught hold of a whale, and they fought it out. There was a lot of rumbling. Apparently there was also a storm. There was a mariner off the coast of Washington. He thought that Mount Rainier and or Mount Glacier Peak being another volcano, had erupted. Okay? But the indigenous Americans, the American Indians here in this area, thought the great big huge thunderbird had caught hold of a whale and shook the earth. They didn't know what to think. They did not know what to think. Okay? Shook the entire area. Okay? Now, this earthquake that we're talking about comes down here into Northern California as well. Okay? Into the Cape Mendocino area. Now I'm going to drop this picture just briefly. We'll come back to it. I'm going back to the USGS map. I want to make sure you understand what we're talking about. For those of you that have been following our program for many years, I think you do know what we're talking about. But what has happened is that the Cascadia megathrust earthquake starts up here in Washington and Oregon area here. This is Washington off the coast of Seattle, Tacoma, Washington, and Vancouver Island here. But the Cascadia subduction zone reaches down here in the Northern California area here. Right where you see these earthquakes, the Cape Mendocino area. There's 3 fault zones here just off the coast of Northern California. First, you have the Cascadia subduction zone. That same fault line that runs along the coast of North America going up to and past Seattle, Tacoma area going up to Haida Gwaii in British Columbia, Canada. Okay? Cascadia subduction zone. Off to the west of there, we have the Gorda Escarpment. Off to the east of there, we have the San Andreas Fault and the Cape Mendocino area. Here you see 4 earthquakes here. These earthquakes are off the San Andreas Fault here. These are aftershocks of a major earthquake that hit here several weeks ago. This earthquake is a 2.8 minor earthquake. This is a 2.7. This is a 3.2. This earthquake over here on land is a 1.5. This one's just northeast of Petrolia, California, the Cape Mendocino area. Now you see this fault zone going down south along the coast of Northern California. Out east of there is called the Mendocino Fault, almost running straight east from the Cascadia subduction zone, the Gorda Escarpment, and the San Andreas Fault here. It runs almost straight east into the valleys of Northern California here, Mendocino Fault area. Okay? Now, why am I showing you this? Why am I showing you? Because that 9.0, 10.0 earthquake that we're going to have may also trigger the Cascadia subduction zone here. Trigger the Cascadia subduction zone. Now, even though that major earthquake is going to hit off the coast of Washington State, that seismic energy is going to travel all the way down here. And as I said, there is a very good possibility that it will trigger the San Andreas Fault. Now, Let's go back to approximately 2019. December 23rd, 2019. There was a scientist from the University of Oregon. He participated in a seminar in San Francisco on December 23rd that year. He spoke at that seminar and said that the Cascadia megathrust earthquake would trigger the San Andreas Fault. In that case, there is going to be major seismic energy coming off the San Andreas Fault going down here into California here, down the San Andreas Fault. Both of those faults are connected. The shaking's going to go further south, a lot further south. As you see, the San Andreas Fault runs south over here, all the way down here just west of San Francisco Bay, California. Okay? It's going to shake this whole area. Now, even though the Cascadia subduction zone isn't down here, the San Andreas Fault is. Now, I would expect to see probably 8.0 magnitude shaking here. It's going to start off as at least a 9.0 to a 10.0 earthquake off the coast of Washington State. But by the time the seismic energy reaches here, it's probably going to be maybe close to 8.0. Still a very major earthquake, major shaking, destructive shaking. Okay? Because that earthquake is going to shake this area. You see two other faults here to the east. Right next to the east side of San Francisco Bay, you have the Hayward Fault. Off to the east of there, we have the Calaveras Fault. All three of these faults in this area are very dangerous. Consider the shaking that's going to happen on the San Andreas Fault. The shaking's not just going to be on the west side of San Francisco Bay. It's going to shake this entire region, including the Hayward. And yes, there's a lot of seismic energy built up on that fault. Still, today, off to the east of there, the Calaveras Fault, there's still a lot of seismic energy built up there. Today, here on the Hayward Fault, this is Castro Valley, California. This is a 2.1 minor earthquake here. Can you imagine what 8.0 energy is going to do here in the San Francisco Bay Area? Can you imagine? Well, guess what? The energy is not going to stop there. It's going to continue going south here. Now we have the San Andreas Fault going southeast bound through the interior of California. Now we're talking about Sacramento shaking as well. Sacramento Valley down here. It continues south here. We have an earthquake down here in Parkfield, California. This is the earthquake capital of California, and today we have a 1.7 tremor here in Parkfield. The San Andreas Fault is going to continue shaking here. Okay? Now, we're coming down here where the San Andreas Fault picks up with the other fault here. This fault runs from the San Andreas here to the southwest, out here to Ridgecrest. Out here to Ridgecrest. Okay? This in and itself is a very dangerous fault zone. Okay? Back in 2019, we had a 7.1, 7.2 earthquake here. And now the scientists are saying that was probably an 8.2. An 8.2 earthquake here in Ridgecrest in 2019. Okay? Right here is Johannesburg, California. A 2.0 earthquake here. Ridgecrest is up here. Okay? Down here is Boron, California. This is a quarry for borax. They're mining borax out of this quarry here. This is 1.5 tremor. We come back to Fraser Valley here. We come back to Fraser Valley. Okay? Right here. The San Andreas Fault continues south and east to the northeastern part of Los Angeles. Okay? Los Angeles is also going to shake. By the time the shaking reaches here, the shaking will probably be reduced to a major 7.0 quake. It will probably be reduced by the time it reaches here to a 7.0 shaking quake. And this entire area of Los Angeles is going to be triggered. There are other faults all over the Los Angeles basin here. Major earthquake shaking. Today here, this is a Santa Maria fault zone here. I'm sorry, not that. I'm sorry, not Santa Maria. This is Sierra Madre fault zone here. Okay? Sierra Madre fault zone. Here in Monrovia, California, we have a 1.6 tremor here. Okay? But this same fault zone is also connected with the San Andreas Fault here. And the San Andreas Fault continues southbound, all the way down here. Cabazon, California. It continues southbound and enters the Imperial Valley of Southern California here. It runs southbound along the east side of the Salton Sea here in the Imperial Valley. It goes underneath the Salton Sea here and comes back out way down here to the south on the southern side of the Salton Sea. When it comes out from underneath the Salton Sea, it takes the southwestern fault area and it goes down to about 2/3 of the way to the west side of the Salton Sea, at which time it continues southbound. Okay, this is the town of Imperial, California. We have an earthquake here. This earthquake here in Imperial, California is a 1.3 tremor here. Just to the east of there is a San Andreas Fault running through Brawley, California. Brawley, California. The San Andreas Fault continues through the Imperial Valley down here. This is Holtville, California. Holtville has had several earthquakes here as of the last week. Quite a swarm of earthquakes. From a 3.7 down to a 2.1 earthquake here, and today a 1.4 tremor here in Holtville, California. As you can see, the San Andreas Fault continues running into Mexico here. Yes, folks, Mexico is going to feel a lot of shaking. By the time it reaches here, it might see 5.0 magnitude shaking. Large earthquake shaking here in northern Mexico. Okay? The Cascadia megathrust earthquake is going to go all the way south into northern Mexico. Okay? That is a lot of shaking. That's a huge amount of shaking. Now let me get out of this fault zone here. And let's go back here to the Cascadia pictures I have for you. Again, this Cascadia earthquake is going to be a minimum of a 9.0, 10.0 quake. Larger than anybody living has ever felt. Now, let's go on. Now, this whole area from Vancouver Island south to Cape Mendocino in Northern California. Major shaking. Major shaking. 9.0, 10.0 shaking. Largest earthquake anybody's ever seen that's living. Nobody is alive now that was alive then. But there's going to be major shaking going on, guys. Promise you. Now, when it hits, because of the population center here in Washington, Oregon, and British Columbia, Canada, this is going to be an inevitable disaster. This thing is going to be an inevitable disaster. You might ask why. Why? Let me show you. Okay? This earthquake is caused by several faults. For example, the Juan de Fuca fault here in the northwestern area of British Columbia, or southwestern area of British Columbia, and northwestern part of the United States. The Juan de Fuca fault is subducting under the North American fault. The Juan de Fuca fault is subducting under the North American fault. It's going underneath land here. And as a result, it's scraping underside of the North American plate. What's going to happen? The Juan de Fuca fault and the Pacific plate are subducting under the North American plate. It's going to cause some rise to the Rocky Mountains. It's going to cause some rise to the Rocky Mountains. Other parts of the Pacific or of the North American plate are going to fall. There's going to be with the subduction, the land mass is also going to subside. It's called subsidence. Okay? The land along the coastline is also going to subside. Okay? But the plate of Juan de Fuca is going to go underneath the North American continent. And it's been going underneath the North American continent for years. Approximately 23 centimeters a year. Several inches a year. Now, yes, we've had earthquakes in this area before. Very strong 6.6, 6.7, 6.9 earthquakes here in the past. However, we are expecting a very much larger earthquake than that. Okay? But this is why that area is going to shake. And it's going to shake heavily. Now, the last time this area got hit was 324 years ago. 324 years ago. That's a long time. Now, let's think about this. Okay? The shortest amount of time a Cascadia megathrust earthquake has had between shakes is 27 years. The longest time period between major shaking was 577 years, according to scientists who dug into the plate area, into the ground, and from samples of trilobite, which are tiny insect-like, they are insects, tiny insects embedded in the dirt area, they found out that the shaking happened 577 years, and sometimes as little as 27 years between shakes. And now we are 234 years past due. Okay? 234 years past due. Now, what happened when the last earthquake hit? In the past years that we've been talking about the Cascadia megathrust earthquake, we've told all of you that have watched our programs that we are expecting a major tsunami to hit. A major tsunami to reach up to 16 feet to 50 to possibly 150 feet high. A tsunami. It's not just going to be one wave. It's not just going to be one wave, it's multiple waves for days and possibly even months after the earthquake hits. Within 15 to 20 minutes after the earthquake hits, you're going to expect a tsunami to hit land. When the earthquake hits, let me show you something. When the earthquake hits, like I said, the Juan de Fuca fault and the Juan de Fuca plate and the Pacific plate are subducting under the North American continent. When that happens, a large part of the plate out in the Pacific Ocean is going to fall. The plate land is going to fall, the bottom of the ocean is going to fall. When that happens, water is going to rush away from the shoreline to fill that void. Water is going to rush away from the shoreline to fill that void. Then what happens? After the water gets out to fill that void, it's going to come back even stronger like this. It's going to come back even stronger. Anywhere from 16 feet high all the way up to 50, 75, 100, 150 foot high waves. Waves, multiple waves. Like I said, they could last for days or months. Tsunami waves. Now, the last time it happened, the tsunami reached over to Japan. And at the time, the Japanese people kept immaculate records. They survived a tsunami. The tsunami crossed the entire Pacific Ocean basin, all the way over to northern Japan, to Miyako, Japan. The area around Miyako, Japan was heavily damaged. Entire cities, towns, and people were swept away. People died. Because the Japanese people had not felt the earthquake shake there. They said it was an orphan wave, an orphan tsunami. Little did they know that the earthquake started over in Washington State. It wasn't Washington State at the time. They didn't even have the name Washington there. Okay? But it was part of North America. The wave started all the way over there. It came across the Pacific and really soaked Miyako, Japan. Nailed it. Nailed them hard. Let's continue with my presentation now. Now that wave hit Miyako, Japan. When that wave also hit the Pacific Northwest, I'm talking Vancouver, British Columbia, I'm talking Washington State, Oregon, and even down into California. When the plate subducted, when the plate subducted, okay, all kinds of sand, all kinds of salt water came over the land mass. All kinds of salt water came over the land mass. In the Pacific Northwest especially, okay, it covered the land. Trees that were standing there at the shoreline were covered by water, salt water. Trees and salt water don't thrive very well. It killed them. It killed the trees. Now all that is remaining there is what they call ghost forests. Ghost forests. Trees that are standing there, but they have no leaves. All they are is dead limbs, dead tree trunks. They call it a ghost forest. Okay? Sand and all kinds of other things are there. The scientists have gathered the information. Judging from what they found, they come up with a idea of what happened and what we're going to expect as a result of that. Okay? Now I want to show you this. Okay? This slide shows you the Cascadia earthquake sources. We have the Pacific plate. The Pacific plate is subducting under the North American continent as well. The Pacific Plate is subducting under Alaska. It's also subducting underneath California. The entire Pacific west coast of North America is going to be inundated. The entire coast of North America, entire west coast of North America is going to be inundated by this earthquake. Okay? The Juan de Fuca Plate is going to subduct also underneath the Pacific Northwest. Vancouver Island, Vancouver, British Columbia, Washington, and Oregon. Okay? Juan de Fuca Plate. To the south of there, we have the Blanco Fracture Zone. It's also its own plate. To the south of there, we have the Gorda Plate. And to the south of there, we have the Gorda Escarpment, earthquake fault. We also have the Pacific Plate south of there. All those plates are subducting under the North American Plate. Okay? That's why we're going to have this kind of damage. Okay? That's why it's going to happen. Richard Smith says he can't type tonight. It's okay. Sometimes I can't do it either. But this is why we're going to have these kind of earthquakes. Now, with that said, let's continue this discussion here. Years ago, I was friends with Terry Rempel. Terry Rempel split ways with me about 3 years ago. I haven't talked to him since. He's blocked me from everything. I don't know why. But all of a sudden he went black on me. And that's okay. But prior to that, he wrote some papers. And I've also done my own research since he wrote those papers. So now what I'm going to tell you, coupled with Terry Rempel's information, is good information today. Okay? The Cascadia megathrust earthquake has been underway for many years now. Many, many years. Since it first happened, it's been getting ready to move again, and in a big way. Now that is a big statement. It's a very bold statement to make. But if there are any lives to be saved by trying to forecast this quake, we need to do it. When Terry Rempel first wrote the paper, he honestly believed that the earthquake was going to happen within the next 2 to 3 years after he made the forecast. Of course, he was wrong. Nobody, not even me, I can't forecast earthquakes like this. And he found the same thing out himself. Okay? But we can still come within a relatively tight time frame. I believe we can still come within a relatively tight time frame. And I believe we're going to have a Cascadia megathrust earthquake very shortly. That's why we're talking about it. Okay? I just got through speaking about how the Cascadia earthquake is going to be released. The Cascadia is being held in place by friction. We've talked about that. The Cascadia earthquake is being held in place by friction. The plates. The friction that's holding them together is sand and dirt and biological material holding the plates in place just like this. When we have planetary alignments like we're about to have within the next few days, 9 planetary alignments in line causing electromagnetic radiation, 9 planets aligning in the universe causing a huge amount of electromagnetic radiation. And also, if you don't already know, the sun has been putting out a lot of plasma radiation as well. We just got through having an X-class flare. We just got through having another X-class solar flare. And between now and Wednesday, it's going to hit the Earth. Between now and Wednesday, it's going to hit the Earth. When these eruptions on the sun happen. It sends out plasma radiation from the sun. When the plasma radiation hits our atmosphere, it goes through our atmosphere to the earth, to the ground we walk on. It penetrates the plates. Okay? It heats up the plates. It even heats up the core of the earth. The planetary alignment causing electromagnetic radiation and the plasma radiation from the sun heats up the plates. When it heats up the plates, all that biological material, that dirt and sand and everything there, all that dirt and sand and biological material is going to turn to an oily, greasy-like substance, a slurry. When that happens, it allows the plates more freely release like this, causing earthquakes, causing plate movement. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. The location of the friction is known as the Cascadia subduction zone. This zone is under the Cascadia chain of volcanic mounts. There are volcanoes off the coast. They're what they call seamount volcanoes off the coast. Okay? Once that stress is built up, over hundreds of years now, it seeks to be released. The most effective means of reducing friction along the plate boundary is to melt it away at multiple points. Again, the electromagnetic radiation coming from the planetary alignments and the plasma radiation from the sun is going to cause all that stuff that holds the plates in place to melt, turning it into a greasy, oily-like substance which is going to allow the plates to more freely move. Multiple points. Multiple points. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. It's going to happen in a big way. Now, this is what is now occurring. Terry Rempel and I combined and compiled a lot of evidence together. Okay? And this evidence is verifiable. The Cascadia megathrust earthquake can now be forecast within a few years, I believe. Now, between Terry and I, we discovered that there is an intrinsic relationship between the activity at the volcanic mounts off of British Columbia, Canada, Washington, Oregon, and even Northern California, and the release of the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. Activity at the volcanic mounts under the ocean and the release of the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. We're already seeing, and we've discussed, the volcanoes up and down the coastline. We've talked a lot about that over the previous weeks and months. Two volcanoes in particular, Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens, appear to be getting ready to erupt. Okay? That's for number one. The seamounts off the coast are also moving in a big way. They're moving in a big way. Now, there's something else you probably ought to know about. Let me get another slide here. This past week when we found out some more information, this is a hole in the bottom of the ocean. This hole in the bottom of the ocean is located west of Mount St. Helens. This hole in the surface of the ocean, okay, in the subsurface, in the ground, in the sand, it's leaking gas out of the earth. It's leaking carbon monoxide, it's leaking sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide and other gases out of the same magma center beneath the surface. Out of the same magma center beneath the surface that is linked to Mount St. Helens. Now this hole is leaking these gases in a big way. It's leaking these gases in a big way, to such an extent that there may be a volcanic eruption underneath the Pacific Ocean, off the coast of Washington. Okay? These gases are coming from magma down beneath the surface. Okay? This is new information as of this past weekend. Indeed, there's very much an intrinsic relationship between the volcanic activity of Mount St. Helens, Mount Rainier, and the other volcanoes, and what's going on with the seamounts underneath the ocean. British Columbia, there's an Explorer seamount. Washington, there's a seamount that I just got through talking about, and others. Oregon and Northern California as well. And these seamounts are indicating action that's happening now. And this is connected to the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. It's scientifically established that the Cascadia megathrust earthquake is a subduction quake. And I just explained that to you. We've discovered the precursor of subduction specific volcanic activity precedes the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. We talked about the volcanic activity in previous weeks. Now, it is rare to have a magnitude 3 earthquake at the volcanoes. Yet we have. We've had 3.3, 3.5, 4.5, 4.6 earthquakes. It's rare to have a high magnitude 3 and even a 4+ magnitude earthquake at multiple Cascade volcanoes. Cascade volcanoes meaning Rainier, Helens, Mount Hood, and other volcanoes. Yet at Mount St. Helens and Mount Rainier, we've seen those earthquakes happening on a frequent basis. Yes, it is rare, but it's happening. This is one of the intrinsic indicators that we're going to have a Cascadia megathrust earthquake event very soon. Now this will be our warning of the impending earthquake. The speed of the process of the release of the megathrust earthquake is not known. We don't know the exact speed of events that are going to happen. But careful study over the past few years, and in years and months to come, even weeks to come, is going to provide more data that will assist all the scientists all around the world in seeing what we're going to see. Now, I want to talk about the beginning of the search for the precursor activity. The precursor activity began several years ago, and it began with the discovery of very loose history of Mount Sayox Cone in British Columbia, Canada. Mount Sayox Cone in British Columbia, Canada. It's been erupting or near erupting since the 1700 area, 1780 time period. Okay? The Cascadia megathrust and other earthquakes have happened. And as I spoke earlier, there was a single mariner that put in his logbook that either Glacier Peak or Mount Rainier were erupting during the 1700 megathrust earthquake. These are clues to a connection between the volcanic activity and the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. Now, again, this is not much to go on. This is actually not much to go on. However, it is the beginning. But we needed more substantial data. And Terry and I searched for it, and we did find it. Let's talk about the added data that we found. This process of this earthquake happening is a process of building pressure over hundreds of years. It's caused by the movement of the North American fault going westward. In previous episodes of this program, we have explained that the Atlantic plate, where the Atlantic Ocean is, the Atlantic plate is pushing the North American plate in a south-southwesterly direction. So the North American continent is being pushed in a south-southwesterly direction, the entire continent. We're talking Alaska, we're talking Canada, and we're talking the United States of America and even northern Mexico, being pushed in a south-southwesterly direction. Okay, we're talking about plate tectonics here. Plate tectonics. Now, why are we going to have all these earthquakes? What is happening? This is the established outcome of plate tectonics. This force overcomes a friction at the plate boundary. This force we're talking about overcomes the friction of the plates being held together. And that begins the process of subduction. The process of subduction. The Juan de Fuca plate, the North American plate going over the Juan de Fuca plate and over the Pacific plate, just like that. Okay? Now, as we've talked about before, this process presents initially as what they call subduction creep. A centimeter here and a centimeter there. We talked about creep before, tremors. Tremors happening up and down the coastline. But now it's not just tremors. I've actually showed you earthquakes happening up and down the entire coast. The subduction creep, the tremor creep, causes subduction. Okay? The plate movement causes subduction. Specific seismic tremors. Specific seismic tremor signatures have been recorded at the volcanic mounts under the ocean, and they've also been recorded on land. And I show you the seismograms to prove it. Okay? All along the contact boundary. All along the contact boundary. From Canada and Alaska southbound. It's showing you the tremors and the earthquakes that are happening. Okay? Everybody's involved. There are over 13 million people. Over 13 million people in the Pacific Northwest alone that are going to feel this 9.0, 10.0 seismic energy that's going to be released. Now, these seismic signatures I'm talking about, the tremors and earthquakes, have been recorded at 7 volcanic locations. 7 volcanic locations. Crater Lake in south central Oregon. Newberry Volcano in northern Oregon. 18 miles west of Mount Jefferson in Oregon. Mount St. Helens in Washington. Mount Rainier in Washington. Tremors and earthquakes at Glacier Peak in Washington. Mount Baker on the southern side of Canada in Washington State. Additionally, there have been an increase in tremors at Mount Meagher in British Columbia. Seamount activity at 6 seamounts from mid-Vancouver Island west and north of Haida Gwaii. It's happening, guys. It's happening. Since the 26th of September 2019, and ongoing even as of the last month, we have found hotspot activity at Mount Sayax in Canada, Mount Aziza in Canada, Mount Shasta in Northern California, Mount Lassen in Northern California, Sutter Buttes, California, little-known Mount Trowbridge in British Columbia, Canada, and an unnamed Vancouver Island mountain with 2 very clear calderas, one on top and one on the flank of the mountain, using overlapping infrared satellite images. We've undertaken a meticulous count of hotspots of Western North America. I've been using all kinds of infrared images from West North America, from mid-British Columbia, and to the northern border of Mexico. Hotspots. This included all of the coast as far east as Alberta, Montana, West Wyoming, western Colorado, all the way over to Utah, and even Arizona. And yes, that's a huge area. At one point in time, we saw 130 hotspots spread across that area. And at times there's been even more than that. 3 years ago, you've been lucky to maybe find 10 hotspots. 3 or 4 years ago, you've been lucky to find 10 hotspots for that same area. Mount Shasta recently had several hotspots on it. And that hotspot activity has increased. More recently, we've counted anywhere from 136 hotspots in British Columbia alone up to 500 hotspots at any one time. Now, slash burn areas accounted for approximately 25% of those hotspots. Burn areas. British Columbia had 17 hotspots before the 26th, just to give you an idea. Why are hotspots of importance? Because the majority of the hotspots are related to magma. The majority of the hotspots are related to magma underneath the crust. It's called crustal heating. Magma rising through magma channels, called crustal heating. A small percentages relate to fires. Mammoth Mountain recently has had swarms of earthquakes. That's off and on from Mammoth Mountain. Several years ago, we had an eruption at Mammoth Mountain. It was only a small eruption, only lasted several hours at the very top of the mountain, but an eruption nonetheless. Magma going into all the volcanoes worldwide cause earthquakes. Magma going to the volcanoes all around the earthquake cause earthquakes and tremors. Okay? But we've noticed an increase in the numbers of small earthquakes being recorded at widespread volcano locations across Western North America. Now, let's talk about interpreting the data. Immense pressures are required to create an immense earthquake, such as the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. 9.0, 10.0. That's going to require immense pressure. And that immense pressure, like I've shown you, is being caused by the plates moving. By the plates moving. Okay? Let's go back here to my plate map. Plates moving. Okay? And as those plates moving, it's causing additional pressure on those volcanic channels containing magma. Okay? There's been a demonstrable increase in symptoms of immense pressure going back about 4 years. There's been an increase in demonstrable pressure going back about 6 years. 4 to 6 years. It is that combined data that reveals the truth of what's going on. The seismology also says that the process of subduction is underway. And as I've said, I've shown you seismograms showing you the seismology involved. The seismograms, the tremors and earthquakes that have been occurring. Now, as I've said, we have ways that the Earth is getting heated up. Plasma radiation from the sun and the alignment of planets in our universe, in our solar system. Electromagnetic radiation from one and plasma radiation from the other. This melting of the friction points that restrains the plates. Okay? The melting of the friction points is going to cause the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. The melting of the friction points. Okay? That's underway. The subduction specific signatures prove it. The seismic signatures that I've shown you prove it. Renee, I hope you feel better soon, dear. Renee's been a very good friend of mine. I appreciate her being here. Have a good night, Renee. Now, this melting of friction points extends laterally over the time along the plate boundaries. Okay? The friction points melt laterally over the contact boundaries, reducing the friction holding the plates together. The friction holding the plates together. New sites of subduction melting occurring due to pressure transfer. Pressure transfer. Pressure transfer meaning the rock. The rock is transferring the pressure. Okay? The more unstuck the rock becomes. Okay? The reduction of friction increases the rate of subduction. The more heat we have from plasma radiation, and yes, it's hitting the Earth right now, and we're going to be hit with that electromagnetic radiation within a matter of days, literally. Okay? It's going to melt those friction points. The increased subduction rate causes an increase in the frequency and the size of the melt uprise, causing an increase in the frequency and size of the subduction volcanic tremors. And those volcanic tremors graduate to become earthquakes as well. Volcanic tremors. As the magma goes into the magma chamber, fracturing the rock inside the volcanic chamber, causing earth movement. Fracturing rock causing earth movement. Okay? This is an exponential process. As this process increases, the larger the earthquakes we're going to have. The speed of development is going to continue to accelerate as the friction reduction continues. And this reduction speeds the subduction process to the inevitable release of the Cascadia pressure. Okay? The friction reduction, the whole process increases the speed of the Cascadia pressure. Thus, what we're going to see is high 3 and 4 magnitude earthquakes at multiple Cascade Mountains. Okay? Right now we're seeing Rainier and Mount St. Helens. But we've also seen increase in earthquakes at the other Cascade volcanoes. Okay? Now this is a relatively short-term warning of the impending Cascadia megathrust earthquake. This is an early stage of warning that we're providing. As we see the increase in earthquakes, and during the next few days, I'm going to show you more and more of those seismograms so I can show you what's going on. Now, since Terry wrote this paper in 2019, there's been new seismic signatures that have appeared at multiple Oregon shoreline sites and even Washington shoreline sites. We've shown you seismic energy moving, low frequency small rumbles, and then roughly 3-minute long intervals. 3-minute long intervals where earthquake seismic energy is moving. And some of you along the coastline have told me that you felt the earth move for time periods, different time periods. This is what happens. This movement, this activity has occurred at multiple sites at different times in Washington and Oregon. Okay? In the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network site, we've seen signals since October 2019. And they're easy to find. They're very easy to find. This is very researchable data. Okay? And that data is what I've interpreted, and I've shown you what's happened. I've shown you the outcome of crustal fracturing. I've shown you the earthquakes that are happening. This deep crustal crunch, the crustal crunch, where the plate, the Juan de Fuca and the Pacific plate are subducting. A crustal crunch. And the pressure transmits through the crust, leading to a later surface fracture. Surface fracture. Okay? Surface fracture. Where the earth opens up. Okay? This occurs at shoreline sites for 2 reasons. 1, that is where the subducting plate is unsupported by the overlying plate. The subductive plate is unsupported by the overlying plate. Okay, that's 1. 2, that is where the plate must bend. Okay, the Juan de Fuca or the Pacific plate is bending. Okay, it's taking a deep dive under the North American plate. It's subducting. It's subducting very near the shoreline. It's bending. And the dual seismic signatures that we've been seeing are proof of it. Okay? Now, this may be a relatively fairly new discovery, but it's been happening for several years now. Terry Rempel first started looking at Oregon and the Oregon shoreline. Brookings Airport, Bandon, Reedsport, Oregon. That activity level has doubled and sometimes even tripled. We've also noticed deep, low-frequency signals. Deep, low-frequency signals, both before and after sharp surface signals happen, and even more complex signals. And some of these signals you're going to see as jumbled up information on the seismogram. I've even shown you some of that. Now, the ones I note have been seen for now years. Years. And I have no doubt what's going on. These crustal fracture signals relate to the subduction processes. These crustal fracture signals are related to the subduction processes. The plates going underneath each other, just like this. Okay? Now, Judy Goodson says, "Hi, Don. She's been missing lives for a while." Judy, welcome back. We appreciate you here. Anyway, going back to October 2019, there were 317 hotspots across West Canada and the United States. There was a 3,000-foot plume from the summit of Mount Adams. A 3,000-foot lava plume from Mount Adams. Now, as I have said before, USBS and the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network deny it happened. For quite some time, Pacific Northwest Seismic Network would not even show seismograms from Mount Adams. Because I've not been showing them on a regular basis, every once in a while the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network will show us a seismogram from Mount Adams. And there's definitely activity going on. Mount Adams is a very active volcano. Mount Adams is that volcano just east of Mount St. Helens. Okay? Additional sites are noted with magmatic infill signals. Magma infill signals. Garrison Hill, south and east of Mount Rainier. Mount Adams. Tom, Dick, and Harry near Mount Hood. Mount Hood itself. And that is 4 more that added to the original signals that we've seen. Mount Mitchell. Mount Mitchell signals have been increasing as well. There's been a cluster of 30 new hotspots located in Idaho. More hotspots in Idaho, north of Salmon River Basin. North of the Salmon River Basin. The western edge of Yellowstone. The western edge of Yellowstone, guys. Okay? There were faint hotspots at Mammoth Mountain in California, Mount Shasta, and also Mount St. Helens. We've been seeing them. On the 26th, there have been new hotspots at Mount Garibaldi. Other hotspots are located all over the place, especially ash cones in various places. We've seen small plumes of steam emanating from Mount St. Helens. We've seen plume bursts from Mount Rainier, even down into California. The fault zone I pointed out that connects with the earthquake fault going up to up to Ridgecrest area, the Garlock Fault. From the Santa Andreas Fault to the Garlock, or up the Garlock to Ridgecrest. We've even seen some steam burst from there. Mount Mitchell signals have increased significantly. There have been hotspots on Mount Hood as well. October 29th, Mount Sayox in British Columbia, Canada, was encircled at hotspots in the snow. Hotspots beneath the snow, guys. And with that, there was at least a mile-high steam plume from Sayox volcano. Now, scientists believe that Sayox erupted at the same time of the Cascadia megathrust earthquake back in 1700. okay? Based on the most recent scientific investigations they've had. And that is significant. Now, we've described the rate of development of the Cascadia release process. Okay? The plate boundary release process, the subduction, the area plate contact boundary, the melt. Again, the melt caused by plasma radiation from the sun, the electromagnetic frequency radiation from planetary alignments, and what's going on with the magma down beneath the plate. Okay? Plate boundary melt. It's holding the plates in place. The movement in one area increases the stress on the remaining stuck areas. The movement in one area increases the stress on the remaining stuck areas. Okay? One area moves slightly and it increases the stress on other areas around it. And then the next area, the next highest stress and lowest friction rate. Okay? And then the plate gives and it begins to move. More and more melt sites equals further friction reduction. More and more melt sites equals further friction reduction. This accelerates the rate of process of release. Based on what we know. Based on what we know. The Cascadia megathrust earthquake itself could happen within the next 2 years. And this is actually developing faster. It's actually developing faster. When Terry first wrote his paper, he believed it would happen within months. Now we believe it's going to be maybe 2 years. Okay? Now it could be shortened. It could be shortened within the next few months. As the friction increases at the plate boundaries, that time period could be decreased. Okay? Now, there are also volcanic eruption potentials. Let's talk about this. The current science seems to have failed to link subduction process to the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. Yet, the contact boundary zone of Cascadia is directly under the Cascadia range of volcanoes. It's directly under the Cascade range of volcanoes. Okay? And it is an established subduction process that created the volcanoes. You can't have volcanoes without subduction, and you cannot have subduction without the volcanoes resulting. We already have evidence of widespread Cascade volcano increase, volcanic activity increase. The subduction-specific tremors and small earthquakes. That's 1. 2. Massive hotspot increase. 3. The lava plumes from the volcanoes. And what will happen when the massive inland areas of West North America drop? What's going to happen when the mass inland areas of West North America drop? By as much as 6 feet. The West North American plate dropped by 6 feet. What's going to happen then? This is going to cause a temporary additional increase in pressure on the magma beneath the crust. The Earth surface dropping, the crust dropping, is going to increase pressure on the magma beneath the surface. It's going to increase pressure on the magma beneath the surface. A magmatic tsunami of pressure is how I see it. A possible magma tsunami pressure. We believe we're going to see magma erupt through potential weak points in the crust. magma eruption of weak points in the crust. Okay? This is based on logic, and it fits with the vague historical accounts. Which volcanoes are likely? Based on the activity levels that we talked about. Most likely Mount Saix in Canada, British Columbia, Canada. Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens, and or Mount Adams in Washington. Saix in British Columbia, Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, and possibly even Mount Adams. Okay? Other potential sites of eruption include, but they're not limited to, Newberry craters, Crater Lake, and even Mount Shasta. We've actually been seeing a lot of activity at Mount Lassen as of late. Mount Lassen has not erupted since 1917. And we've seen a lot of activity as of late. A lot. Some of the buttes have also had significant hotspots, such as Sutter Buttes. And those hotspots are likely lava expulsions, flowouts from the magma channels. Now, the 2nd of November 2019, using 25 volcano discovery satellite images dating back to October 2nd, 2019, and even the same kind of activity now. We've had volcanic hotspots at the volcanic mounts. We've had hotspots at the volcanoes. Saix, Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, one at Sand Mountain, and several at Mount Hood. And even at Sisters Volcanoes. Remember, Sisters Volcanoes are actually 3 volcanoes. It's a volcanic complex. We've had hotspots at Mount Shasta. We've had hotspots at Mammoth Mountain. We've had multiple hotspots at Mount Lassen. As I said, Mount Lassen has been showing a lot of activity. We've had 14 hotspots at Sutter Buttes. We've even seen Mono Lake with additional activity during the past 3 weeks. Mono Lake near the border of Nevada and California. Mono Lake. That whole area there. Okay? And even at Craters of the Moon. Craters of the Moon. And how about Santa Clara, Crater? Occasionally we've even seen small lava plumes at Mount Adams in Washington. Okay? That is another increase. We've seen volcanic increases at the various volcanoes. Some of those increases are only faint, only seen on the closest images. Okay? And sometimes you see them when the sun starts going down or the sun starts coming up. But they're there. They're not miles away either. They're right there. They're mostly at the summit. Some are at the base, but most of them are at the summit. Okay? There are some hot spots excuse me, at lesser known volcanic locations. Okay? But we're still seeing increased hotspots. Okay? Excuse me, let me get a drink of water. We're seeing these at volcanic locations all over. We've seen hotspots down over by the Salton Sea as well, in the southern part of the Salton Sea as well, in the area of Imperial Valley. Okay? Excuse me. Now, the latest science from sediment sampling by the scientists said when the Cascadia goes, usually goes at full length, and did in 1700. And the scientific research estimates that the 1700 earthquake was as massive as a 9.3 magnitude quake. It could possibly go up to 10 magnitude. There is immense pressure that's required to create that size of an earthquake. And if that explorer plate off the coast of Vancouver Island and the Gorda Escarpment to the south, broken off sections of the Juan de Fuca plate, that zigzag fault plate, okay, are included, then we have about 1,950 miles of plate movement. 950 miles of plate movement. That's huge. That's immense pressure that is required to move that amount of plate. If that subducts all at once, look out. Now, since we are overdue compared in the average of maybe 76 years, this earthquake may be higher than a 9.3 earthquake. Okay? A 9.3 plus, affecting up to 950 miles of plate movement. And that's with a high level of probability. Now, some of you know the name Steve Quayle. Steve Quayle's also been working on the same thing. Some of the responses that we've seen came through Steve, who is someone who's obviously at a very current high level insider in this industry. We've received a lot of information. Number one, 200 trillion tons of molten liquid carbon have been discovered in the western United States under the crust. Over 200 trillion tons of molten liquid carbon discovered in the western United States under the crust. It's been imaged seismically, and it's confirmed through ScienceAlert.com. There was an article that came out in 2017 in ScienceAlert.com that discusses this. The article stated 100 trillion tons, not 200 trillion, but 100 trillion tons. And we actually suspect that Steve Quayle is more than accurate. Okay? Now we talked about the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. We talked about the Cascadia subduction zone. Okay? Extending from British Columbia, Canada, all the way down to northern Mexico. From Cascadia fault line all the way down the San Andreas Fault to northern Mexico. And this includes many lesser fault areas as well. Some offshore faults may also show escarpment movement. Offshore faults may also show some escarpment movement. We've seen that offshore of Los Angeles. San Clemente Island, where we've shown you earthquakes happening there. We've shown you earthquakes off of San Diego as well. Okay? The Rose Canyon Fault there. And even offshore of northern Mexico. Okay? We've shown you seismic energy there. Okay? Now, historically, the Seattle Escarpment Fault has displaced upwards by 200 feet in one single event. The Seattle Escarpment Fault was displaced, it moved upwards of 200 feet in one single event. Geologists have proven it. Now, we're also told that the Pacific and the Juan de Fuca plates show a twisting deformation. A twisting deformation. Force of torsion being applied. Now, I personally have not found any data that supports this, but this is written. Okay? It's written. Now, there is an abstract scientific paper that was written that is talking about California area. Big time. Big time. Now, it was described that there is a wedging force on the Pacific Plate caused by the Philippine Plate to the south. Okay? The Pacific Plate and the Philippine Plate. Tonight, we even talked about large earthquakes happening over Luzon, Philippines. Okay? There's a wedging force there. Now, that area also is the largest subduction zone area in the world. That's why they keep getting those earthquakes there. But there is a wedging force there. There's a huge wedging force. The Philippine Plate is a wedge. The Philippine Plate is a wedge. It's shaped that way and leads to a logical conclusion that it could be creating wedge effects on the Pacific Plate. Okay? Now, having been around Idaho area when I was a child, I saw trees that were being felled by professionals. And I've seen what happens when wedge force is applied to a tree. It literally cuts through the fabric of the tree, of the trunk, and separates the fabric holding that tree together. And all of a sudden, what happens when you remove the wedge? The tree falls, doesn't it? Okay? That force, that same force can be created by a wedge. A very simple little wedge, overcoming thousands of pounds of force. Thousands of pounds of tree falling after the wedge of a simple 2-pound axe. Okay? That's what's happening down there in the Philippines. Now, why does this relate to what is going on off the coast of Washington and Oregon and even California? The Pacific Plate, guys, is a huge tectonic plate. When we have force coming from the south, wedge force coming from the south, moving to the Pacific Plate in a northeastward direction. And we have the Atlantic Plate pushing on the North American Plate to the south-southwest, moving like this. Increased plate tectonics, right? Oh yeah, in a big way, in a huge way. Okay? We've seen the plates move 2 centimeters to 30 centimeters a year. 2 centimeters to 30 centimeters in a year. Okay? The spreading of the Mid-Atlantic Plate is a proven phenomenon. The Atlantic Plate is moving just like this. It's spreading. Okay? The Caribbean Plate. The Caribbean Plate is also being pushed. The Sandwich Island Plate is also being pushed. We've seen what's happening down there. That is also a huge subduction zone. But the Sandwich Island Plate is moving as well. Now, with the volcanoes over on land, let's go back to the Pacific Northwest and all of California. With volcanoes on land, especially in the Cascade region, 15 volcanoes on land. We have at least 7 seamount volcanoes out to sea. And those seamount volcanoes and the other volcanoes on land are increasing in activity. Now, we add that to the effect of molten with molten carbonate at the friction points. The more fluid that was there, the more fluid that's there is going to cause even greater movement as those friction points are dissolved. This is also going to increase the eruption levels at the volcanic chain from Mexico all the way to the mid-British Columbia area in Canada. From British Columbia, Canada to the north, all the way down to northern Mexico. We're going to see more eruptions with higher volumes. We're going to see more eruptions with higher volumes. Okay? We saw what happened in 1980 at Mount St. Helens. It's going to happen again. But this time I believe we're going to have Mount Rainier involved. And maybe even Mount Lassen to the south. We've been seeing activity over in Los Angeles as well. Okay? Now, there is a potential. There is a potential of year-long volcanic winters. Of year-long volcanic winters. Year-long volcanic winters, guys. And that could happen all over the northern hemisphere. Okay? A Cascadia megathrust earthquake due to torsional forces being long overdue in the Cascadia area. Okay? The Cascadia megathrust earthquake due to torsional forces. The Pacific plate, the Juan de Fuca plate subducting. Okay? With that happening, with everything else going on, we could see a 9.5 to 10.0 earthquake, even maybe a 10.5. This may not be unrealistic at all. This would also increase the height of the tsunami. This movement would increase the height of the tsunami as well. Just so you know. And this is a big deal. This is a big deal. The Cascadia megathrust tsunami. Let's look at that. By historical large subduction earthquakes and related tsunamis. And this weekend we actually had a tsunami where a tidal wave hit Peru. And scientists don't even know why. Scientists don't even know why they had that tsunami or tidal wave hit Peru. It affected a lot of people. Boats were tossed around like play toys. Okay? We saw that happen. Now, there has to be a scientific reason. No, when I first started looking at that earthquake, I thought there's got to be earthquake activity to cause that tsunami. But I did not see it. I did not see subsequent plate tectonics happening off of Peru. But I'm going to continue looking. Because it had to have happened. Otherwise, that would not have happened. Okay? When we are looking at earthquakes, major earthquakes, that would cause a tsunami like that to hit off the coast of California and the Pacific Northwest, we have to have related magnitude earthquakes. Wave height equals earthquakes. Wave height equals earthquakes. After an 8.0 magnitude earthquake, you factor a factor of 1.5 for each full magnitude increase. Thus, an 82-foot tsunami from a Chilean 9.4, 9.6 earthquake translates to a 123-foot tsunami. Okay? That's what happened not that many years ago off the coast of Chile. Over in Chile, there was 9.4, 9.6 magnitude earthquake, major earthquake. And it contrasted to a 123-foot tsunami. Now, if the Cascadia megathrust earthquake is a 10.5 earthquake, can you imagine the size of that tsunami being probably as high as a 150-foot wave? Think about that. Okay? Now, when we think about that, the data set is small, but there are variables that affect the amount of seafloor deformation, the amount of seafloor movement, and undersea landslides as well. And that may have been what happened off of Peru. There may have been an undersea landslide that caused that tsunami in Peru this past weekend. We don't know. I've looked for hotspots and haven't found any yet. I'm going to continue to look. Okay? But there's localized variables that could cause a height to reach a 150-foot tsunami height, in my estimation, over the Cascadia megathrust earthquake region. Okay? Now, other earthquakes could also increase pressures that could also be part of this earthquake risk. Other earthquakes in the area. And yes, we've seen those earthquakes around Seattle, Tacoma area. We've seen 6.5, 6.9 earthquakes there. We saw what in California, in San Francisco. All these earthquakes have values. All these earthquakes are interrelated. Plate movement. Plate movement. Okay? Every earthquake also releases stress and builds stress in other locations. Earthquakes release stress here, and earthquakes cause more stress here. Okay? Stress transfer. Stress transfer. Okay? There was a large earthquake on December 25th, 1699. That was 1 month before the 1700 Cascadia earthquake on January 26th. Okay? What's going to happen? We don't know yet. We don't know. We know one thing, though. We know one thing. This earthquake is going to happen. That's only a matter of time. It's not if, but when. That's what we have to look at. That's what we have to look at. Ruthie's saying ripple effect. Yes, one earthquake here causes stress here. And there's a ripple effect, literally. It's a domino effect. It's a domino effect. Do any of you have any questions? I know I've covered a lot in a very short time period, but I wanted to make sure you guys all knew what was happening. Okay? Now, I've been tracking a lot of Canadian earthquakes, NRCan seismic earthquakes. Okay, those of you living in Canada, you can access NRCan on your internet. Okay? I've been tracking Pacific Northwest seismic network as well. I've been tracking hundreds of seismograms on the USGS. Okay? That covers Canada, southwestern Canada. That covers the Pacific Northwest and all of California. And I've been keeping an eye on all of North America as well, Canada and the United States, and the other earthquakes around the globe, as you guys know. I watch it all. And sometimes it's very hard, especially when we have something major somewhere else. And I tend to move over there and say, what happened there? And I try to find it out. I also look at Discovery Volcano and their infrared satellite tracking that they have available. They track hotspots as well as other sources I use as well. Okay? All kinds of stuff I look at. That's because I want to make sure that I give you all the best information. Okay? Now, the more data that I come by gives you a more basic foundation to understand what's going on. That's why I'm here. The more data I come by and pass on the information to you gives you more basic information on what's happening. So you have a greater idea of what's going on. So that you can plan. So that you can plan. Planning equals preparation. And preparation equals planning. It all comes together. Now, in order to have an earthquake like we're talking about, it comes with a very large force behind it. A lot of force to create that 9.0, 10 plus earthquake. It's going to happen. The whole continent of North America is moving. It's moving to the south-southwest. The Pacific Plate and the Juan de Fuca Plate are moving towards the northeast. Okay? The North American Plate is moving to the west like this. Huge plate tectonics and subduction. Okay? We talked about the spreading of the Mid-Atlantic Plate and the massive outflow from the formation in the Caribbean. Okay? We talked about the Cayman Islands and what's going on with Cayman Island Trench. Okay? We've seen a lot of movement out there as of late. I fully expect to see another major earthquake around the Dominican Republic and Haiti. It's literally the amount of time. When is it going to happen? But the Cascadia earthquake is coming. And every day that passes, it's one more day closer to this happening. Okay? Now, I've given you a lot of information tonight. Most of you might be overwhelmed by the information I've given you, and I'm sorry. But I also felt it necessary to give you as much information as I can. I don't like going about scaring people. That is not why I talked about this tonight. Scaring people bad is not my idea. But I wanted to give you information so you'll have it. I want to give you preparation. I want to get you ready for what's happening. And I promise in the coming year that our emergency preparation is going to increase substantially. Substantially. I'm going to do my best to give you more scientific information about what's going on in Cascadia. I want to give you more information about what's happening in the South Pacific. All earthquakes originate in the South Pacific. And I'm going to give you more information about that. I want to also give you more information about Hanford, what's going on in Washington State with the Hanford nuclear power plant. We haven't talked a lot about that as of late. There was one point in time, 3 or 4 years ago, Hanford was hot, literally. It was hot. There was a lot of earthquakes there, but there were also magma spreading radiation. They buried all that nuclear waste in the mountains around Hanford. And some of those containers tipped over. leaking nuclear radiation into the surface. And there's water beneath the surface. Then we have seismic events happening as well. That also spreads the radiation. Okay? That happens. Now, with everything going on, politically and seismically, our countries are really mixed up. Our countries around the globe are hurting, literally hurting. A lot of people lack spiritual connection. And because of that spiritual connection with God, we have bad things happening in our society. We need to help ourselves center. We need to come back to God. Our infrastructure is hurting. Our national debt here in the United States is in the trillions of dollars. Hundreds of trillions of dollars. And I don't know how much more trillions of dollars we can absorb. But that all figures into it. Our economy here in the United States and elsewhere, Canada, Mexico, Europe, everything is about to collapse. It's going to cause chaos. It's going to cause martial law. It's going to cause martial law. And that's going to clamp down on our styles, which is going to cause civil unrest. Civil unrest. There's going to be global impacts as well. We're going to find out during the next short while that we're going to see an increase in military needed at home here in the U.S. And we're going to see more and more military pulling out from other areas around the world back to our own country. President Trump has said that he's going to increase the Iron Dome around the United States because of the threats we've had from Europe, from Russia, and China. We're in war. We can't deny it. It's already happening. We have military involved around the world, here in the U.S., around the world. And over in England, the English military is also stretched beyond proportions. Incredible. China is knocking at our door. China and Russia are knocking at our door. And what about the Arab countries? Iran. These evil countries, these evil networks, are going to take advantage of the void that's going to be created, by the lack of U.S. influence. Fact. Voids are always filled. That is a lesson in history itself. Okay? At our present stage of events in our country at this time and around the world, there are three realistic outcomes. Three realistic outcomes that are even part of the Cascadia event. Outcomes that follow a very great tragedy to come. Why am I talking about this? Because I've gotten more active information than I've shown you tonight. This is going to allow our families and friends to prepare. As you know, Carol and I and our families have been preparing a lot more. And those of you that have sent letters and stuff to Carol and I, you told me that if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be preparing at all, or very little. This program is all about emergency preparedness. The reason I started this channel almost 6 years ago is to help each one of us. It's why I've done it, to help each one of us. The paper that Terry wrote and the information I put together with what Terry had has now increased. It's increased. I don't seek any recognition, but I do seek to try to save lives, and I've talked about this before. The whole reason I have this channel is to help save lives and prepare. A lot of you have been putting out information here in the chat, and I greatly appreciate that. My dear friend Don Patoga has been here putting out information literally all night, as well as some of you. As Don Patoga says, a lie doesn't become truth. Wrong doesn't become right. And evil doesn't become good, just because a majority of people accept it. Evil does not become good just because a majority of people accept it. Fact. We have people that have been fear-mongering as well. People have said Terry Rumpel's been fear-mongering. People said I have been fear-mongering. That's not the truth. The only reason I talk about this is to give you information. Because what I've talked about tonight is going to happen. And I promise you that. It is going to happen. And it's going to happen in a big way. It's going to happen in a big way. And I promise you that. Now, I've given you a pretty solid foundation to work from. At least I hope I have. And as we go forward, I'm going to give you more and more information. Okay? Please don't attack the messenger. Please don't attack the messenger. We are here for you. We're here for you. That is the only reason I want to talk about it. Okay? Despite all the logic, all the science, it all can come together for good humanity. For humanity. Just like Jimmy Carter. He wasn't the greatest president because there were all kinds of other forces working on him, beating him up, keeping him from doing what he wanted to do. But after his presidency, look at the humanitarian effort he put out that greatly helped everybody else and prepared them for moving forward. Unreal. Unreal. Now, I also want to thank Steve Quayle. Steve Quayle has been a great influence on me and other people. There are some other people that Steve Quayle talks to, but some of the time they take it out of proportion. They blow it out of proportion, and that's unfortunate. Steve Quayle has done a fabulous job, but the people that blow it out of proportion are wrong. They're very wrong. But I want to thank Steve for his information. I want to thank Steve for helping me and helping others get to the truth. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. I look to Steve Quayle, Terry Rumpel, and many other people. But quite frankly, folks, I look at the data. And the data is what gives us the information. Be aware. We're going to be talking very soon about all of the earthquakes in the Pacific Northwest by the end of this week. I'm going to show you what's going on. We've been showing you California. We've been showing you North America. Tonight I showed you briefly over Europe. USGS is showing less and less what's important because they don't get it. USGS doesn't get it. They've lost touch with what I call reality, honestly. I believe they've lost touch with reality. Brothers and sisters, I love you. I care for you. I care for you a great deal. Tomorrow night is New Year's Eve. New Year's Day is Wednesday. We're going to be doing some program tomorrow evening. Now, I would ask all of you to watch our program tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, I'm going to try to make it more fun. I'm going to open up the chat, for example. You can chat about almost anything you want tomorrow night. It's New Year's Eve. Let's talk together. Let's have fun together. Wednesday night, we can start getting back to more reality. But Wednesday night, we're talking about new goals, a new year, where we're going, what we want to do. Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. Tamara McGee is here in the chat. Thank you for being here, Tamara. We appreciate you. She says she has a very dear friend, lives near Seattle, Washington. Should I advise him to move? I don't think he will take it seriously if it's not being reported by officials there. It's not being reported by officials there because they're being told not to. Now, you can tell him to move, but it's not going to happen. I'm not telling any of you who live in Seattle or that area of Washington or Oregon to move. But I am telling you to prepare. With adequate preparation, you might be able to weather what's going to happen. Why do I say that? Even the authorities in Seattle in that area are moving higher ground. They're moving schools. They're moving facilities to higher ground to be able to save people's lives. Yes, there's going to be a majority of the people in Seattle, up and down the coast. I'm not just talking about Seattle either. There's going to be a multitude of people, the greater majority of the people that are going to go, I don't care what's going to happen, who cares? And then they are the ones going to suffer because they have not been listening. They've avoided the facts. That is the last thing I want to have happen. I'm asking all of you, please share this program far and wide. Share it far and wide. I'm giving you the information for basics to get going. Share the program far and wide to your friends, your family, your extended family, your neighbors, people you associate with on social media, and even the people you work with. Also, subscribe this program. 25% of the people that watch this program or listen to it are not subscribed. Subscribe this program, guys, and also before you leave tonight, like it. Give us a thumbs up. That lets YouTube know that you are very interested in what we're talking about. Giving us a thumbs up goes into YouTube analytics, where they decide whether they're going to let anybody else on YouTube see this program. And yes, everybody needs to see this program. Everybody far and wide. Okay? Please do that. Subscribe, and when you subscribe, right next to the subscription button is another button with a bell icon. Click on that bell icon. A drop-down menu of 3 items will come up. Click on the word ALL, all. Click on that. That should get you notified whenever we come on the air. Be advised. We come on the air between 6 and 7 most evenings. Tonight it was almost 7 p.m. because I had some problems with YouTube. That's getting to be more prevalent, unfortunately. But I'm here. I'm here to do you a service and help you. Also, if you want to, you can help support us in a super chat or super thanks. We appreciate that. Also, in the top of our program description, and I'm sorry I took it down, also in the scrolling portion of our program here at the bottom of your screen, you're seeing our email address, and you're also seeing our local address. 104 North Green Street, Box 105, Morganton, North Carolina. The zip code here is 28655. Our email address is rltnspdema@gmail.com. If you want to help support us, you can do that. Okay, you can send us letters and cards and slip a donation inside the letter or card. You can also send us information, if you have it, for us to our email. Also, in the top of the program description tonight are 3 ways you can help support us. 2 PayPal locations and a Venmo location. You can send us donations that way. Also, one other thing you might want to know about is how you can join the EMA family here on YouTube. I kept the donation levels very low so that we can get as many people here as possible. Donation levels start at $1.99, the second level is $2.99, the third level is $3.99. And we're getting more and more $3.99s as well, and I appreciate that a lot. But folks, you guys are the ones that help us grow. You guys are the ones that help this channel grow, and we need that. Also be advised, YouTube has been unsubscribing people like crazy. They've unsubscribed over 15 people in the last week. YouTube's unsubscribed 15 people in the last week. So please, folks, check your subscriptions, make sure you're still subscribed to this program. YouTube doesn't like me. I really don't care what they like or don't like. But this channel is growing by leaps and bounds. When I first started my first channel here on YouTube, I got 25,000 subscribers within the first 4 years. Then, a year and a half ago, they shut down my first channel. So in the past year and a half, I've nearly gotten another 7,000 subscribers. We're over 6,000 right now, 6,159. Because YouTube is unsubscribing people again. We want to get back up to the level we were at 2 years ago, with over 5,000 subscribers. You can help us grow that way. The more people we have subscribed to this program, the better, because we're getting the information out to the masses. That's why we're here. I appreciate all of you here. I appreciate all of you here. We appreciate that so much. God bless you guys. God bless you. Thank you for being here. Now, I put together a special presentation for you, ending this program tonight. Watch this special presentation. Have a good night, folks. If anything else happens tonight, we will be back with you as soon as the information becomes available. Same thing goes to tomorrow. But we will be back here at 6 p.m. tomorrow night with a special called Ring in the New Year. God bless you. God be with you until we meet again. Have a good night, everybody. Much love. See you soon. I'm sorry, all of a sudden it's not coming up. Just give me a second. Give me just a second. We'll get this here. This happens occasionally because YouTube screws things up. Hold on a second, we'll get it. I can't believe this. I had this all set up. Isn't this something else? When we least expect it, Credit hits the oscillator. It's incredible. I thought for sure everything was perfect. Just a second here. Come on. Man, I worked so hard on this. Can't believe it. Come on, come on, come on.
As we all have seen, spring, summer, fall and into winter went by quickly. As we have seen, Valentine's Day, Easter, 4th of July, Thanksgiving and Christmas whisked right on by. As we have shared throughout 2024, with you preparedness, being ready for an emergency and making you aware of earthquakes, fires and other things, that our New Year's resolution to you is that we won't stop speaking about preparedness, what to do in case of emergencies, making you aware of the types of emergencies that may come along and educate you on earthquakes, events and happenings so you can stay prepared. We also want you to think about this and other things too. When you think kid-friendly holiday, New Year's Eve probably isn't the first thing that springs to mind. But just because the kids might not last long enough to see the ball drop, doesn't mean they can't participate. In fact, New Year's Eve is a great time to come together and set some family goals for the upcoming year. Have you planned on your New Year's resolution? Goals? Think about it. What New Year's resolutions will your family be making for 2025? Personal improvement or happiness, fantastic goals to strive for. Even to ushering in a new era of personal protection and improving home safety. You could also make a resolution of many other things, including with spirituality, emotional changes and consciousness decisions. With this, we Art Emergency Management Associates are here for you with our own New Year's resolution. Continuing to prepare people for coming emergencies and disasters. Continuing to help save lives. Continuing to educate everyone on earthquakes and other disaster events that may arise. Continuing to minister to many about Jesus Christ with the Bible and more. We are here for you, and wish your family a happy New Year's with love, warmth and goals for 2025.